Hello and welcome. Thank you for tuning in to our expert panel discussion today in partnership with Microsoft, where we'll explore how the latest mobile-first technology can empower modern workforces with seamless connectivity. The title of our panel today is Evolve Your Digital Services, starting with Microsoft. And I am delighted to be joined by Gareth Bleasdale, who is Modern Work Lead at Microsoft. Hello, Gareth.
Hi, David.
Alongside Gareth is Principal Innovation Partner in BT Digital, Dr. Nicola Millard. Hello, Nicola.
Hello, David. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you very much indeed. And also here is Director of Digital Work at BT, Andrew Small. Hello, Andrew.
Hi, David.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you very much indeed for joining us here today to share your insights on a subject which I think it's safe to say many organisations are wrestling with a bit at the moment. In today's cloud-first world, we rely more and more on digital services to connect employees, to drive productivity and to deliver products and services quickly and reliably. Getting this right has become critical to delivering performance and success. But what should organisations be doing to evolve their digital capabilities and embrace the future? And where do they even start? Well, I think that's a good place for us to start, to address the challenges posed by the reality of a fast-paced, fast-changing business environment. So, Andrew, you work with lots of different types of businesses in your role with BT. What are they telling you about the challenges that they're facing and about the priorities that are helping to shape their digital strategies?
Well, you're right, David, it's been challenging. I think for most of them, we've been talking to them throughout, and it's not been one challenge, it's been a succession of them. I think we all thought when the pandemic finished and people were planning on the return to work, things would very quickly settle down, and there was a debate about whether it'd be the same as before, how much change there would be. Actually, the reality has been is it hasn't settled down. And, we've had a succession of challenges, economic, geopolitical since then that have changed and changed what customers have been talking to us about. So I think the first thing to say is they're dealing with a lot of uncertainty and they're taking decisions to manage that uncertainty more than anything else. What I hear is we don't want to lock ourselves into something for 3 years. We want to be able to respond. And I think that is a change of mindset. We're having really good discussions with our customers, and it's true to say everything from the smallest customer to the biggest customer, there's some themes. We've grouped them into 3, all rather conveniently beginning with P. So the first thing that comes out is people. How does it feel to colleagues? How do you work with colleagues? What's the policy? How's that going to work? I think the second one is productivity, which never goes away. It's one thing I always remember, go in and talk about technology and hybrid working, ways of working, but actually what everyone wants is a productive workforce. And the last one is planet, and that's the one that's new in a sense. I think when we all started working from home during the pandemic, actually we did some things that were really good for the planet that have carried on. So we started traveling less, we started working in a more efficient way from home and from the office. And international travel especially replaced a lot more by video. And so planet has become a much higher priority when we're talking to customers. So 3 Ps, people, productivity, planet, I think groups together all the discussions we're having.
So uncertainty is certain. Companies not wanting to lock themselves into whatever strategy they adopt, it needs to be agile to embrace this uncertainty. And those 3 Ps I think are really interesting: people, productivity, planet. Feeling we'll be touching on each of those in our discussion today. I'll come to the people one first of all, and Nicola, that's very much your area of expertise there. Talk to me about how the employee experience, the people side there, how that has changed, how that's been impacted by the adoption of technology. We've seen technology play so much more of a part in the workplace, wherever that is. So what impact has that had?
Well, I think the first thing to say, it was the holy trinity of technologies that got us through the pandemic. So they all conveniently start with the letter C, not P. But so cloud technologies, collaboration tools and connectivity. Those three fundamentals enabled us to lift and shift people into a very different workplace almost overnight. Now, that's not to say we couldn't have done that before, but we know that innovation is always provoked and accelerated by a crisis. And boy, did we have one of those! So then people got a taste of how they could potentially work in a very different way. So I think that there have been some significant positives on that. People have embraced that ability to choose, for example, how they work. It comes with some downsides, I guess, as well. The fact that we are always connected to the office. To be honest, this was a problem before the pandemic, but the fact that our little devices are always on and always on us actually means that we're always permanently, potentially connected to our workplace. And that can cause some problems. So how do we find the off switch being one of the primary ones? Because we know that working longer and longer hours actually doesn't lead to more productivity. It often leads to burnout. And for people that are struggling, we've been sort of looking at how do we maybe re-establish some of those boundaries that have crumbled. So that's certainly been an issue. I think that there are lots of things that people have said that are really positive. There are some negatives as well. Certainly around those death by meeting days, I think have particularly been a noticeable problem. And we know actually from research that Microsoft did that those death by meeting days are also not particularly productive. So after about 4 hours of solid back-to-back 30 to 60 minutes, the brain starts to implode, basically. So we get habits like, interestingly, people tend to turn their cameras on more in the morning than they do in the afternoon. Right. So for complex decision-making and knowledge work, that's not a good way of working. So in some senses, what we've learned, I think, is that although there's been a lot of dialogue about home and the office as places to work, actually the common ground is digital.
Yes.
And that also requires you to maybe lift and shift things that worked perfectly well in the analogue world, but don't work so well in the digital world. And I think those death by meeting days are one very good example of where we probably need to rethink for both the sake of the people, but also the sake of their productivity.
So I think absolutely right. As our workplaces move from the physical to the digital, some of those underlying problems that were there beforehand, work-life balance, digital well-being and all that sort of stuff, they still remain and they still need to be addressed. And there's a number of different ways that we can think about that. We'll come back to that in a moment. Gareth, I want to switch from people to platforms now. And we know BT, Microsoft have partnered together for an awfully long time now. But what would you say it is that makes Microsoft particularly relevant to the way that, as Nicola's highlighted, the way that work is evolving right now?
Excellent, thank you. I love what Nicola said, actually, about that desire to work agnostic of the location and also almost agnostic of device, to log in, get work done and move on rapidly. And what we've found is that for the majority of information-based workers, when they log into something, it's through Microsoft. So whether that's logging into your device securely through the Enter ID behind the scenes, or whether that's going into Microsoft Teams or into Outlook to get your day started, they tend to start with a Microsoft service. Now, behind the scenes, what we're doing is we're surfacing information in different ways, be that through an email, or be that through chat, or be that through Word. So as customers are looking to take advantage of this rapid pace of innovation, we provide a secure route that allows them to do that without having to do huge amounts to negotiate new suppliers or to go through additional privacy and compliance reviews. We allow them to evolve in a safe environment and in a way that the users are confident to test and trial new ways of working.
I see here you've got some data that suggests around 2/3 of UK businesses rely on Microsoft and Office 365. So presumably, based on what you were saying, there are some benefits there for businesses to build upon the technology that the workforce are already comfortable with using.
Indeed, and we have to remember that IT is about humans interfacing with information and interfacing with data, and humans are a diverse bunch. Yeah. Some users love to experiment and try new ways of working. Others prefer more tried and tested models. And by keeping that user experience and the user interfaces very consistent, we give the users the flexibility to change their working paths, try new things in a way that works for them, whilst keeping a common, secure data model so that the organisation can be confident that their data is secure and processed in a way that they decide, not Microsoft.
So in the face of the certainty of uncertainty and the different digital working places, practices that we have, some consistency through the way in, through Teams, Office, whatever, that there is key there. Tell me about Teams Phone Mobile. This is new to me. What can you tell me about that?
So we think this is really exciting, particularly for those users that are out and about and are quickly moving between office, car, customers or partner premises. Teams Phone Mobile, put simply, allows every call to become a Teams call, whether you make it from the normal dialer on the mobile or from the Teams client. And that means that wherever you are, you can get the call, you're able to pick it up if you want, of course. If you don't want to pick that call up, then it will feed through into one voicemail, not two, which is your Teams voicemail. So you can manage that either through the app on your device or indeed through your soft client.
So with such a large user base, it strikes me that Teams has the potential to be a really valuable tool to affect some of this culture change I think we've been talking about. But as we're going to talk about next, simply providing the tools and technology alone does not guarantee the adoption. So Andrew, what else is needed to deliver that user experience, to deliver one that sticks in the face of change and that drives engagement and that drives adoption?
So that's one thing. Whenever I'm talking to customers, I talk a lot about end-to-end experience. That if you actually want that productivity we started talking about at the beginning, actually that's about making it work for us as users. You know, we talked about whether that's at home, whether that's mobile, in the car. If it works end-to-end, then people, you know, are more productive. And when you talk to customers about what they get frustrated with, it's when it doesn't really work end-to-end. Now, I think our thinking on that has evolved. When we started talking about that during the pandemic, everyone was at home or working remotely. And then end-to-end experience then meant what we would call ear-to-ear experience. So everything from the headset to the local connectivity, whether that's your broadband at home or LAN in the office, the core network, the core platform, all of those things together gave you that experience. But I think we've moved on a little bit from there, because I think one of the other things that characterises work is, you know, people come and go, employees, new employees, people leave, people move office, people change the way they want to work. So apart from the sort of end-to-end experience, you have this digital experience. How do you make those things really seamless? So as a new employee and I join, I get the services quickly, I get really good adoption training, so I pick it up quickly, so I'm productive quicker. If I move office, it's really easy to move it. If I want to change my tools, add Teams Phone Mobile, for example, it's easy to do. So that's the sort of digital experience. And then as people have started coming back into the office, you've also started thinking about the physical experience. You know, how many people in a meeting room? Is it the right number? Is it too few? Is it too many? Is the meeting room warm enough? Are certain parts of the office overcrowded, some bits of it empty, so it's hard to get people to come back because they want to come back to be with their colleagues, to be more productive. So, you know, we talk a lot about experience because I think of all the things that we ever talk about, that's the key to this productivity thing. Yeah. Get the experience right, you get people productive. But then we're talking about end-to-end, physical and digital experience. It's the combination of all of those that makes it work.
Absolutely, and I think we've all experienced that dreaded kind of meeting room moments where it's a big pitch or a big meeting and you are praying that when you plug your laptop in or whatever it is, that the tech works and you're going to see the presentation on the screen or the other contributors are going to be able to dial in. And well, sometimes that unfortunately isn't the case. There's an interesting stat that I've got here on meeting rooms. It's a study by Frost and Sullivan. Apparently, no more than 4.2% of meeting rooms globally are equipped for video conferencing. So clearly some room for more adoption of technology there. Talking time for some of our own research on social media. We did a quick poll to ask what frustrates you most about technology at work. We had 4 options: unreliable connectivity, information only accessible in the office, too many passwords and login, and lack of training on new tools. Here's what our LinkedIn audience had to say. Well, lack of training on new tools, that was 24%. We had information only accessible in the office, only 8%. I think that's a good thing. That talks to me about adoption of cloud technologies and so on. I have to name it, unreliable connectivity, 21%. Not sure whose fault that is, but that's certainly a thing that our audience has reflected. But by far and away, the biggest number here of office technology frustrations, too many passwords and logins. What's your take on that? Security, convenience, that constant juggle being the top of people's pile, Andrew?
A couple of things in there. I mean, the passwords thing, you're right, that's the juggle between security, privacy and convenience.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw that a bit during the pandemic, people obviously giving away passwords, not using them properly because it's convenient, and then things happening. I think the user training one's always interesting to me, and that's a bit linked to the password one. I think when we started up, we've got a big user adoption team because I know how important it is to get people to use the technology. And at one stage, it was like we go in when we do the deployment, train everybody, and then leave. Of course, now there's new features being added to Teams or all of these tools every few weeks, and people can be very competent and then quickly be out of their depth in a couple of months if the user interface changes or the password construct changes. So I think those two things are a little bit linked, but making people confident with the technology constantly, I think, is one of the challenges. The more features we put in, the more often they change, the more work we've got to do to make people confident to use them.
I'll throw that one to you to respond to that. You know, the fact that we are using technology, that you're not installing from a box, from a shelf once a year now, that it is constantly changing, responding to customer needs, I'm sure you would say that does present some usability challenges that need to be carefully managed to make sure that your user base is able to get the most out of the tools you're providing them with.
Absolutely. And I think the key to that is consistency. You don't want to be going into a meeting room, having a login that you're not familiar with, and then recording a meeting and find that meeting recording disappears into a different silo simply because you've used a different type of device. So by enabling consistency, by providing a platform-based approach to innovation, it makes it much easier for end users to actually feel more confident in the solution. And the other side of this is that from an IT perspective, if you're implementing a solution at a platform level, it makes it a lot easier to manage different flows of information and to provide things like password login at scale, using biometrics, using multi-factor authentication, and completely doing away with that problem of passwords.
Nicola, any pickups from you on the responses from our social media audience on that?
I've always said that the more secure you make something, the less easy it is. And to be honest, we're very lazy creatures fundamentally. So to Gareth's point, you know, using things like biometrics, rather than having to remember my password, I usually have my face with me. So generally, you know, not so much of a problem. And you can use, obviously, two-factor authentication if there's some doubt. But yeah, I think if you can make it both easy and secure, you're onto a winner.
So that survey, it tells a story, doesn't it, of the frustrations that we all experience in our workplaces. But Nicola, in terms of optimizing user experiences to overcome maybe some of those frustrations, it goes just beyond just the frustration piece, doesn't it? It's about inclusivity and about accessibility too.
Oh, completely. And actually, if we look at that fundamental digital workplace that I mentioned earlier, actually the digital workplace is quite an inclusive and accessible workplace if you think about designing it that way. So, for example, people that can't necessarily be in an office on a daily basis, so if we look at people with disabilities, people on the neurodiverse scale, potentially they're not necessarily going to want to or be able to go into a physical space. In fact, the physical space often isn't digitally enabled, so you can't actually see what goes on in physical spaces half the time. Whereas if you're on a digital platform, you can record things, you can share things, you can subtitle things, you can do automatic translation, you can send your bot to a meeting.
Yes.
There have been some issues around that. Certainly, I think a few managers have been somewhat shocked that they've held a meeting and no one's actually turned up physically. Everyone's sent their bots. So effectively, they're running a webinar. So there are certainly some cultural issues there. But I think if we look at that inclusivity piece, the digital workplace actually could be a lot more inclusive. But I think over and above that, in terms of employee experiences, certainly people that struggle with technologies, as Andrew said, we need to make sure that we handhold them if they're not digitally confident, because one size never fits all. People will be degrees of confidence in terms of their technology use. And if we look at from an employer perspective, they actually just want an attractive workplace. So recruitment and retention is still a big problem at the moment. So they want to be able to recruit the best, and the best want things like flexibility and good technology. And then they want to retain them. So again, all of those things play into a strategy around how do I make this an attractive and productive place to work.
So when technology can bring so many benefits to employees and businesses, you might wonder what it is that's holding back that adoption. Well, that's what we wondered, and so we put the question to you on social media. We asked, what's the biggest barrier to adopting new innovative technologies in your organisation? We had cost, skills shortage, time and security as your options, and well, there wasn't an outright winner in this one. Skills shortage was down at 16%, lack of time to bring in new innovative technologies at 22%. Security was quite high, 3 in 1, 1 in 3 people said that, almost at 29%. It was cost that came out on top as the biggest barrier there. Interesting. What are your takeaways there? I mean, it was, security was also up there too, but the fact that cost is up there is an interesting one, I think.
It is. It's not a surprise, I have to say, because in amongst all of the challenge and changes, people are also migrating technologies. So they're migrating from legacy telecoms products, premise-based solutions into cloud-based solutions. And of course, during the pandemic, lots of people moved very quickly to cloud-based solutions. Some didn't. Of course, now they're looking, I started by saying uncertain world. Well, one of the things you don't really want is a whole load of technology in a building, because that's one of the things that restricts your ability to deal with uncertainty. So, then you've got to look at the cost of moving from that legacy technology to a cloud-based solution like Teams. And I think when you look at that, that is a challenge for some companies, some organisations to make that jump. We're working very hard to help them make that jump. Changing the way we price so that it's more economically sensible to move. People are fearful of migration. You wouldn't want to move and lose your service and your ability to call your customers as you do it. And we've got to be very respectful of those worries. But I'm not surprised price came up. Whether it's price of the service or the cost of moving, I think is a nuance we'd probably follow up on.
But like you say, when you are moving from maybe an on-premise solution to cloud, and it's the changes of process, changes of workflow that go with that, you are investing for the future. There is a front loading to that cost, I guess, to deliver on those benefits later on.
Yeah, and I think we've got to be respectful of that. It's, when you look at it and say, well, I'm going to get all these benefits in the future, but I might have disruption in the short term. Our job is to mitigate that disruption and mitigate as much as we can the cost of that migration, because where you end up is a better place.
Yeah. Gareth, security came second at 29% there. So it's clearly a big concern for organisations who are adopting new technologies right now. What would your advice be? What would your response be in terms of that digital security piece?
So I think, first of all, it's right to worry about these things.
Yep.
A little bit of anxiety never goes wrong when you're making big decisions and you've got responsibility to manage a whole organisation's data effectively. And those macro threats are real, they are growing, and they are pushing into the cybersecurity sphere. So I think there's two sides to this. One is developing tools that are consistent and simple enough for users to interface with so that they can use their common sense to detect risks, so that they would recognize an odd-looking email or an insecure interface and be able to be aware and alert enough to make the required actions. The second is from a platform level, starting to think about how can I consolidate tools so that I drive a reduced number of data stores, that I can simplify my architecture so that I have a fewer number of admin portals, which means fewer attack vectors. Yep. And by reducing those attack vectors, allow my security team the energy to focus, to manage logs, to interrogate, and to protect that data with more vigor.
Right, so consolidation to reduce that attack surface.
Correct, yes.
Okay. I mean, of course, you can never be too careful when it comes to keeping your business safe. But as the saying goes, you are only as strong as your weakest link. And that means that the whole workforce needs to take security seriously. So people, workforce, Nicola, I'll come to you. What advice would you give to businesses around ensuring that staff are fully engaged, are fully on board with adherence to security protocols?
I mean, several things. Firstly, as I said, the more secure you make something, often the less easy it is. So easy drives a lot of behaviours, to be perfectly honest. And if things become too difficult, they find easier workarounds. So I think the case is it's much more around treating people like adults. So making sure you educate them and make sure that they're aware of what they're doing. But also, don't ban stuff. Don't put too many obstacles in. If it's almost impossible to transfer a file because USB ports have been locked down, cloud services have been locked down, what are people going to do? They're going to send it to their personal PC, and then it'll be completely insecure. And it's not malicious. That is not malicious. It's just, okay, I've got so many obstacles. It's not easy. How do I find an easier route? Now, it's interesting that I've been talking to quite a lot of CISOs lately. And they said, I was kind of, security is often used as the excuse that we can't do things. And they turned that conversation completely around, saying, actually, it's their job to enable people to do those things. So they are there as the innovators, they are there as the enablers. Whenever there's a barrier, there should be a secure way of doing it that doesn't make it horribly difficult to do. And then people start to do things that are very insecure.
Andrew, Nicola mentioned her conversation with CISOs there and trying to position themselves, hopefully successfully, as enablers rather than the blockers there. And of course, they play an important role in, digital transformation. We were talking about the journey that organisations are going on. It's fair to say, though, that the real change makers within organisations, if you see digital transformation as not just a technology thing, it's a whole organisation thing. It's not always that they're part of the IT department. It's a much broader conversation within an organisation, isn't it?
Yeah, in fact, that's one of the changes I would say. In some cases, this productivity gain, the motivation of staff, the efficiency, that comes from a different part of the organisation to IT. And with different drivers. I mean, sometimes they're frustrated by the pace that IT will want to do things, but actually that's the place where the business case is, that's where the benefits are. So they ask for things in a different way, whether it's, bigger companies might have a digital workplace director or just somebody in charge of, it might be HR, it might be, for the contact center part, it'll be a customer service director, a marketing director. They have a view of what they want to do, and we have to enable that, but with IT on side. And we just talked about security there. There's no, from a BT perspective, we make sure that the services we deliver, whether it's to an IT manager or a line manager, are secure end to end. We use, our products have that built in so that we're not compromising on what IT would want to deliver what a digital workplace manager or a workplace manager would want.
And I expect this is where the value of partnerships like BT and Microsoft, for example, that's where that really starts to provide an advantage to organisations who are embarking on these journeys.
It does, because it's when you take a brilliant platform like the Microsoft platform and then enable it for a customer, make it work for them, make it work end to end with all the connectivity and the security and the adoption. That's where they get the value from a great platform. And that's the combination of the two organisations.
So we've heard some really compelling reasons so far today about why businesses should be looking to evolve their digital strategies right now. But With so much new technology to consider, it's not always easy to know where to start. Gareth, Microsoft Copilot. Lots of great conversation around this, lots of excitement around this as well at the moment. And it's one of these new generations of AI-assisted technology that many businesses might be considering adopting right now, but perhaps don't necessarily know what the use cases for it are. So what have you got to start us off with those?
It's a fantastic question and very pertinent at the moment.
Yes.
So when users are logging in to their PCs or their mobiles, they're doing that to interface with information, to find out information, to interrogate information and draw conclusions, or even to share information. And you can think of our copilots as another user interface to allow you to do that, and to allow you to do that a little bit better. So to explore that, I'm going to share a couple of examples. A few different copilots, if you will. We have Microsoft Copilot and Microsoft Copilot Pro, and both of those are designed to allow you to better access information that's freely available on the web. So, for example, you might use that chat interface to ask the service to perhaps explain how penicillin works through the eyes of a 10-year-old. And so you can personalize that prompt to get exactly what you want. Or you might ask it to create a short LinkedIn article that's punchy and engaging around how BT is narrowing the digital divide. Those kinds of tools that use publicly available information and allow you to get that piece of work done faster, or to be a little bit more creative. And then you can extend that by embedding those copilots into applications and enabling access securely to different data sources. So, for example, Microsoft Copilot for Microsoft 365 allows you to do exactly that. It allows you to leverage securely all the information that you have access to within your Microsoft account, and then surface that within different substrates. So you might access that through Outlook or through your Teams client, and in a very intuitive manner. So imagine you're in the middle of a meeting, you've just zoned off a little bit because you've been having too many meetings during the morning. You might ask Copilot, catch me up on the last 30 seconds, or what questions remain unanswered? And Copilot will be able to give you a reasoned response. Or you might have a quick task to do, maybe introducing a new employee to the business. So you might ask Copilot inside of Outlook, quickly generate a short email to celebrate the start of a new employee. And what Copilot will then do is leverage the information that's available, perhaps via referencing a document or via what you've typed, and give you a quick output, saving you important time and then allowing you to review it and personalize it. So what we're doing is we're making it really easy to be that little bit more productive in a way that's personalized to you.
So very much on that productivity P that Andrew mentioned earlier on, and it strikes me two very different domains of operation. You've kind of got the best of the web in terms of write me a LinkedIn article or whatever it is, but then the other domain, I'm thinking from a kind of privacy and security and IP point of view here. Tell me about the stuff that's happening within my business, within my Outlook or whatever. So being able very, very clearly to query and get value from both of those. I can see how that's absolutely on a capital P on the productivity front there. You know, Nicola, time and time again, we talk about how technology for technology's sake, not a good idea. Invest technology where it can have the most impact for the business. What other areas, in your case, would you say that organisations should be looking when it comes to the investment, using technology to invest to get more value in the right place?
I mean, a subject very close to my heart is customer experience and customer service,
Right.
and I think yeah, it's got potentially a huge impact on that. And we often end up talking about knowledge workers, and those knowledge workers could work anywhere. But if we think about frontline workers, for example, they don't have a choice in terms of where they work, because they've got to be in front of a customer. But how they work could change very differently if we look at technology enabling it. So effectively what we're doing is blurring the boundaries between what we would call a frontline job and a back office job for a start. So changing that dynamic of collaboration between the two, and whether that's, well, in an extreme case that we've been looking at, a consultant and a paramedic using different collaboration technologies, some of them innovative, so things like augmented reality, but actually just using collaboration tools to change that dynamic and enable a dialogue to go on that wouldn't probably have gone on before. And then obviously another subject very close to my heart is contact centres. Now, I think there's always been an assumption that contact centre agents have to be co-located, and actually our surveys have shown they want choices as to where and when they work as well. And there are a number of reasons why it's an advantage to enable them to work anytime, any place, anywhere, particularly when you get tsunamis of demand. Now, the other dilemma, I think, with the contact centre industry is we're automating out all of the easy stuff. So we're now getting our frontline people, whether in contact centre or anywhere else, are having to deal with really complex and emotive stuff. And I've written a lot in the past around this notion of communities of coping. And that could be, I'm being asked an incredibly difficult question and I don't know the answer because I've got a yelling customer in front of me. I've got bewildering numbers of databases. So how do I get to the knowledge? How do I get to the right expert that can maybe give me some advice? And then if it's a stressful day, they probably need a mechanism to either mentors or at least somebody when there's no one around, when you can't see tears, when you can't give people a hug, who do you go to if you need to cope? So there's a lot that we're looking at around that. And some of that, and we're even talking about wearable devices potentially being used to spot very stressed people. We'll see how that goes. But, how do we establish communities of coping, particularly for people in those really challenging frontline roles?
And actually, for me, bringing together those two different responses in terms of the co-pilot that can support you in your role, and then when you start looking at contact centres as well and the support that people in contact centres may require, particularly for those more challenging, emotionally driven queries that are coming to them, actually bringing those two technologies together feels like a really exciting application, really valuable for the business application. Andrew, we've spoken about some of the P's already. We've spoken about people, we've spoken about productivity. I think the P that we haven't landed on very much is planet. So how can you frame the planet conversation in amongst the other things that we've been speaking about today?
Well, it's a topic that's come up a lot more with customers, and it's in procurement requests as well nowadays, much more. There's two things, I think. First is in BT, us engineering our own platforms for reduced energy consumption, reduced carbon. And that, we take our global voice network, really big voice network that supports all of these platforms. We've moved that from a legacy physical infrastructure into a shared virtual infrastructure. And that's 81% more energy efficient before we start. And then I think the revelation for me is it's that much more efficient with very little traffic on it. The more you run it at capacity, it gets even more efficient than that. So, for us, that's a starting point. We want to make sure the infrastructure we run is really energy efficient. I think when I talk to customers, the help they want is they want to be able to measure their own efficiency, their own carbon consumption, their own energy efficiency, and giving them dashboards that sit on top of the platforms they're using and we help them run. Also helps them answer that question about how much energy can you save, how much carbon can you save. I think, to me, the ability to measure it, to take tangible steps to reduce it, that's what matters. And in the end, whether it comes up in a procurement request or just in our day-to-day engagement with the customers, that's really resonating. When people can see a dashboard, that really helps.
As the adage goes, you can't manage something until you can measure it.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah,
strikes true there. Gareth, today we began by recognising the need for businesses to evolve their digital strategies, to embrace the future and accommodate the uncertainty that comes with that. Do you think there's a right way or a wrong way, actually, a right way or a wrong way for organisations to make the right IT investments that maximise the opportunities that are available with the technologies like we've been talking about, yet to maintain some of the agility that I think we've agreed is also necessary right now?
Indeed. And our challenge is we live in a world that's very volatile and is very complex at times. And we all approach business problems with our own biases and perceptions. And one of the challenges that we have to make on a personal level is to start to become comfortable with plurality and ambiguity, to almost preserve ambiguity through the decision process. So what does that mean practically? It means that a business solution that might have a very specific a business problem that might have a very specific technical solution might have other ways of solving that problem. And that might exist already within your platforms and capabilities. Equally, what you might find is as you explore the problem statement further, you actually find solutions that resolve wider problems in the business and create a much better outcome than you'd originally planned. So I think having that mindset of being comfortable with a little bit of ambiguity, being willing to explore and remain curious, really helps in the long run to make sure that you preserve and maintain that bottom line.
So stay curious and embrace that uncertainty. I like that. Andrew, you brought uncertainty to the table right at the beginning of today. Any builds on what Gareth had to say around that investment piece?
I think that uncertainty, Gareth made a good point, is the key to this. And what you're asking customers to invest in is a structure that allows them to cope with uncertainty. So it's not, being able to say, I'm going to be able to do this. It's can I engineer the way we collaborate, the technology I use in a way that whatever happens down the line, within reason, of course, we're able to cope. We're able to have people working differently. We're able to move office. We're able to acquire another business or divest of it. All of those things that happen, that we've set up a structure that's doable in the future. And I think the point about curiosity or embracing it is right, because it's not going away.
We are almost out of time for today. We've heard some terrific insights, though, on how technology can empower businesses and workforces in many different ways. But before we close, team, if you had one takeout for businesses, for our audience here today, to help them best prepare for this digital future, what would it be? Nicola?
Well, I think we've already said it. Stay curious, embrace uncertainty. But I think that is all about keeping an open mind, experiment. Not everything's going to go right, and particularly in uncertain circumstances, you can't always control all of your variables. And also, one size doesn't fit all. So you've got a very diverse workforce. Just putting one solution in isn't going to work. You've got to kind of embrace the craziness of a really interesting workforce and enable them to work in very different ways.
It takes a lot of bravery, though, to embrace that uncertainty sometimes, doesn't it?
Absolutely. But it is a fact of life now, so.
Yeah. Gareth, your takeaways?
I think it would be to encourage new ways of doing things. Mm-hmm. Often you will find that there's a whole plurality within the organisation of how to communicate, how best to run a meeting, how best to interact. That's okay, because users tend to know what they're doing. Yeah. Users tend to have a good idea of what they're trying to achieve. So celebrate that. Find new ways to share good news, share ideas of how you're collaborating well, how you're using the technology, and create that culture of curiosity and engagement.
And I think this comes back to the point we're making earlier on about how CISOs, rather than being the know people, actually being that enabler. So yes, listen to your workforce and work with them to find ways to get stuff done. I like that very much. Andrew, final thought.
I would always say people first, technology second. If you're after a productive, motivated, collaborative workforce, then technology doesn't give you that on its own. You have to start with them, and then the technology can really enable it. But people first, technology second for me.
Very good. Well, that just about wraps things up for today. Thank you to our panellists, to Gareth, Nicola and Andrew. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you all for watching as well. If you'd like any more information about what we've discussed here today, then please do check out the link in the description. But for now, from all of us, bye-bye.